Jordan driving. He'll go for it. Yeah, he got it. He got it. He got it.
Sports is a tool that teaches, and it teaches you bad things. It can also teach you good things. It's how you perceive those things.
The Chicago Bulls have won their 6th NBA championship.
As much as we pump iron and we run to build our strength up, we need to build our mental strength up, and so that we can be in concert with one another in times of need.
And he goes after the first pitch, way back left field. Derek Jeter, he's on and out. Goodbye, home run. First pitch homer for Derek Jeter.
My focus is always on what I can do in a particular situation and try to help us win.
Final seconds. Bryant for win.
I have a calmness about whatever comes my way and a poise. And that comes from starting the morning off with meditation.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Coach's Classroom. I'm your host, Matt Strike. On today's episode, we have Kevin Tarca, who is an international sports agent, former Quinnipiac men's basketball player, and the founder of Kreation talent agency. After traveling the globe and beginning his own sports agency about 2 years ago, Kevin now represents 8 professional basketball players, both domestically and abroad, which we'll talk about more in this episode. This is a 2-part conversation with Kevin. So you're currently listening to part 1. You can always take a look at the show notes just to get a more in-depth and detailed look at what we go into in this conversation. This is a particularly meaningful topic of conversation for me, having spent a little bit of time playing abroad in Sweden and Australia. But Kevin really comes at it from a different perspective, the sports agent perspective, and we get into some great concepts, the conversations he has with his clients, how those relationships are formed, his values, the insight he provides to his players, and how that entire process works. So if you or anybody you know is curious about what it's like to be a sports agent, thinking about becoming a sports agent or starting your own agency, is curious about what international basketball is like, I think this is a great listen, and I would definitely encourage you to share the episode and spread the knowledge. What's going on, my man?
What's happening?
Did you just get back from Europe? Did I see something on Instagram or Twitter that you came back? Or when's the last time you were there?
It was March? No, February. End of February, early March. Yep.
Okay. So how many countries have you actually been to?
So 33. Up to 33. Which is awesome. Yeah. It's funny because every time and for me, like I travel a lot in short periods of time, and I just start racking up all of a sudden, and like everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, man, you've been to the whole world," and I'm like, "Well, there's actually like 197 countries in the world, so like, actually, I feel like I haven't been to many at all. It's crazy to say, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun." So
this is all client relationships and all that stuff. I mean, you have 8 guys in 8 different countries right now?
So I have 8 guys now, 2 of which are about to graduate.
Okay.
One graduates tomorrow. So 6 guys playing.
Got it.
I had two that are still in Luxembourg finishing up. One's in Australia currently. One just went to China on this little exposure tour, which is amazing. I actually have not been to China yet, but that's very high on my list. Who am I missing here? One was drafted in the G League, and then he finished in Armenia. And then my point guard's in the Pro B Championship in Germany.
So before we get into the brass tacks, I got to know, you've been to 33 different countries. Where would you say has the best food?
Ooh, okay. That's a great question because everyone's like, what's your favorite? I'm like,
no. I get asked that all the time.
That's a great question, man.
Yeah. Food. I'm a food guy.
Oh, man. You know what? That one is really tough too, but I would say it's a little easier than answering what's your favorite country. I think that the easy answer, which obviously I love, is Italy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the easy answer. I'm Italian. I'm actually working my dual citizenship right now, which has been a nightmare, but trying to get back to the family roots. But I love Italian food. Obviously, pasta is a given. But outside of that, I would say Serbia, man.
Really?
Belgrade, Serbia. Yeah, it's it's like either that or Slovenia. It's very like, you know, kind of meat and potatoes type. It's just it's
Okay.
different.
Hearty. Yeah.
Yeah, and like Cevapcici, which is I guess Istanbul. There's a lot of that too in Turkey, but yeah, Serbia, Turkey, Slovenia. Man, there's so many.
Interesting.
I every time I'm over there, I'm like, man, I need to do like a culture blog, a food blog. You know, like I have all these ideas. There's so many different unique things in all these countries, but
Maybe a little side biz.
yeah, it could be. It could be, man.
You can be like Greg Popovich, you know, who always recommends wine in restaurants around the country.
I did see that the other day,
guy for Europe. You know what I mean? Like taking account like places you eat, like what's the best food, what's the best cuisine. Be like, all right, this is where you guys got to go. So that's great.
No,
I need
to. I got to do a better job of organizing those thoughts and just
when you were in Italy and you had pizza, right? Margarita pizza, or whatever it is. Were you a fork and knife guy, or did you say, no, I'm going New York City style, I'm going to fold it up and do it with the hand?
I went in. No fork, no knife. I went in.
Yeah, a little stubborn. I would try, but and then I would look around and then people would be staring at me and I'd be like, all right, everyone else is eating this with fork and knife. Let's try to immerse yourself into a little bit of the culture here. It's so foreign to try to eat pizza. I just remember that being a thing. Is like before I went to Naples, Italy, I never knew that people out in the world eat pizza with a fork and a knife.
Yeah, I think it depends what kind of establishment you're in for sure. I mean, I definitely want to try, you know, get used to the culture there and not stand out too much as a tourist, as an American, but.
True. Hard for us to do. As soon as you open your mouth too,
Definitely. I'm usually just me anyways.
Yeah, I know. Right. What is the reaction of some of your guys? Because I imagine that, I mean, there's a lot of people in general in the United States that haven't been out of the country, but for some of your players who go over there for the first time and then you're communicating with them about the culture and the people and the geography and all that stuff, what is some of the reaction that you've gotten? Is it kind of one of those eye-opening things when they communicate to you about, you know, the experience in general?
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, I think I do a good job of preparing them for that because it's important, and not that other agents or other people don't prepare them for that, but I think maybe being a little bit younger and kind of going through it, especially because on the American side, not to get off topic, but some of the agents here mostly have partners overseas.
Right.
So that whether they visit once or twice a year or never visit at all, they just don't really immerse, which is fine, just their business model. But for me, doing what I did to immerse myself in all those countries first, I'm like, I don't want to send a guy to a country that I don't know where to tell him where to eat, what to expect, what the culture's like, what the economy's like. So, so being there, I kind of prep them like, look, you know, this country, like, you're gonna have to go outside your comfort zone. People might not like you because you're American. They might not speak English, or it's, you know, kind of like, hey, you know, Germany, it's pretty similar to the States, you know, westernized, and, you know, most people speak English, and but the reactions have been, you know, on the spectrum of like, wow, this is not what I expected, or like, hey, Kev, you got to listen to what happened. Like, wow. And I'm just like, you know, it's
yeah, it's great.
You know, it's a kind of a 360-degree reaction for my guys. But again, I think I do a good job of prepping them for that, because you just never know. But
and that's something for them too, is whether or not they realize it now, 15 years from now, when they look back and they're talking to you about this, they're going to be like, what an experience, you know, like what an experience. Like there's nothing that can prepare. You can try to prepare them the best you can, but there's nothing that can actually prepare them other than just being there and living it,
yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
So, but that's a beautiful thing. So you talked about a little bit about like when you first got into it, how you didn't want to send guys just on a whim out there. I do want to talk to you about Kreation Talent Agency, which you are the founder of. Okay. Where'd you get that name from? Kreation with a K. Kreation with a K.
Yeah.
Where'd you get the name from?
It was kind of a random like thought process. I mean, I was the guy that's like, you know, everything needs to be perfect. I need to think of the perfect name, have the great logo. And I was like, you know, I don't want to be like Kevin's, you know, basketball talent. Like, come on, man.
Well, you have a great logo. Let me tell you that, though.
I appreciate it. Shout out to my man, Brett. He's a Quinnipiac guy. He's out in LA. He did the logo for me. But, yeah, it was kind of like, I kind of wanted to to balance that. Like, I definitely think that part of the of what makes the agency is it really is, it really is me and my character and personality, and smaller and family oriented. So I think having the built around what I am and what I stand for was important. But again, I wanted to balance that with, I don't want it to be Kevin Tarca's this or that, but then create, I always talked about creating opportunities for yourself. And then I was like, what if I just switch that C with a K? And then it's kind of like KTA, which are my initials, but it's really not, it's Kreation Talent Agency, but it's Kevin Tarca. And I was like, that's kind of cool. And then I just threw it out there, and I'm like, you know what? At this point, we're going with it, man.
That's great. And when it all fits together like that, it's like, all right, this is what it's meant to be. So how did you get into the industry? Is this something that you've always wanted to do, or?
I played at Quinnipiac. I knew that I wasn't playing after I graduated.
Yeah.
So I wanted to combine that passion for basketball with the business degree in finance and economics. And kind of, that morphed into the travel and the personality and the everything came together. I'm like, wow, the relationships I built with college coaches and my teammates, and maybe it would be a cool, at first it was more of a cool thing to do,
Sure.
And then combine that with what, I don't watch too many shows, but Entourage was another favorite one of my shows. And, Ari and Eric and them doing their management thing, and just kind of being that connector was really what I was like, I'm good at this. I can talk to people, I can hustle. And that's kind of how I got into it. So, and after that, I had the opportunity to go to Europe and get a master's degree that was run by the EuroLeague.
Got it. Okay.
Which was really the opening to the overseas. And that was really my mindset. I'm like, how do I get overseas? How do I get overseas? Before I even heard of this master's degree, I'm like, that's really going to be my differentiator, because it's an oversaturated market from players all the way to agents and coaches. Obviously, if you want to be a coach, it's difficult. If you want to be a player, it's difficult. If you want to be an agent, it's difficult. So how do you differentiate yourself, right?
Absolutely.
I'm like, all right, let me go over there and to Europe and kind of learn the markets. And then I got this email that popped into my inbox, some ad for this program. I'm like, all right, that seems kind of cool. I looked into it, and the next day hopped on a call with the guy that ran it, and they're like, we've never had an American in the program. And I was like, where do I apply?
Right.
How do I get in? And that's what led me there. And then kind of to summarize this long tangent is, after I was over there for a while, built some relationships, I wanted to come back and join a bigger agency, or any agency really. So, I'll never forget, I was sitting in Belgrade, Serbia. I wrote 50 handwritten notes to the top 50 agents and agencies and sent them out, and didn't really hear back from anyone. So I'm just like, all right, well, not going to sit here and cry about it. I didn't get an opportunity. So I'm just going to jump again and just kind of go.
Go be your own boss.
Yeah, exactly. And it's been amazing. I have to balance that every day with, obviously I didn't start my company because I know everything or I'm the best at what I do.
Yep.
I started because it didn't have a chance, and I'm not going to just kind of sit there and wait. I'm just going to go. But so I have to balance that humbleness with I know I'm young. I know there's so much to learn. I know if I was with an agency, I can learn from someone, but now with the confidence that I'm different than the rest and I can do it. And I've proved that. So those are two very opposites, where I'm just one side, I'm having conversations with NBA, assistant GMs and G League GMs and coaches and other agents that are more experienced than me, where I'm just kind of got to be that low man on the totem pole, all the way to, talking to some of them with certain players or overseas GMs, no, this is what's going to happen, because I'm confident enough that I can get it done for my guy.
Right.
So right. It's a weird balance, but it has to be done. And
I'm sure that you've seen yourself grow over the years as that's gone. You said a lot of good things in there that I wanted to talk about: networking, differentiation. These are things I want to get into. The first being the value of your network and networking. As a coach in the industry, it's something that I wish I had learned when I was younger. And I wish it's something that people taught you in high school or when you're younger, that it's going to be about the people you know and the people you're close to, and them having a high opinion of you, not necessarily about what your resume is going to say or how good you are, because there's a lot of really, really good people in these industries out there. You talked a little about how you developed that network, but maybe you can expand on it and the importance of it, and in what that skill has done for you in your career.
It's huge, man. And again, it's very similar on your end with the networking, but networking is that is that word now, the past 5 years. It's that buzzword, right? So it's really just relationships. And,
For sure.
you know, I know you said it a little bit. It's about who you know. Honestly, I forget who told me or I read it somewhere, but when I read it, it stuck with me. It's not who you know, but it's really who knows you. And that hit a little bit.
Yeah, of course.
That hit me because it makes so much sense, you know, especially in the industry. I'm sure you hear it all the time. And one of my lines that I say sometimes, but I make sure I say it correctly, but other people say that I hate is, oh yeah, that's my guy. Like, that's my guy. Well, is he your guy or do you have his phone number?
Right.
You know? And so now when I catch myself, when I say it, like if I'm saying, oh yeah, that's my guy, like legitimately I can pick up the phone, call him and he's going to answer. So, you know, I almost take that who knows you to the next step of when you call someone, will they answer? So like, of course I have a lot of GM's numbers and a lot of scouts numbers, and it doesn't mean I'm close to all of them. Are they going to answer me and can I provide them value? Speaking of which, taking it to the next level, I've learned that, I mean, building my foundation and network was the goal, straight up goal. So I knew it's going to take it's a long-term game. It's nothing's going to happen overnight. So developing those genuine relationships was huge for me. And I think to be able to do that, you have to be able to give without expectation. Right. And for me, that was like, how can I help? So if I'm talking to a G League GM last year, or even the year before, or even sometimes now, and you know, I know the level of my players, and now I'm lucky. The 2 guys I signed, I think they're great guys. I think they can have a future in the G League or the NBA, and even some of my other guys that might build their way up to that. But I know I don't have a first-round draft pick. My players know that too. So when I'm talking to someone, I'm not going to sell them BS. I'm not going to be like, hey man, like you got to check out this game, this clip, send them highlights. It's more just building the relationship. So when I see them, you know, now guys know that when they talk to me, it's not going to be me selling some BS. It's just going to be like, hey man, how are you doing? Like, you know, it was great to see you at the Final Four in Istanbul, or you know, I saw this awesome picture that you went on vacation with your family, or like, how can I help you and give you information without expecting anything? Like that now guys know that I'm not expecting anything, like expecting them to give my guys a contract or anything. So now they're like, okay, they can have a conversation with me.
It's less threatening. It's less threatening. It's
absolutely
authenticity.
Absolutely. And there's a no, you're right. Authentic is huge. And there's a level to where, like, of course, like if I think my guys are in a position to be good enough, like it doesn't mean I'm not going to fight for them. Like sometimes I do. I'm like, look, you got it. You got to give this guy a tryout. You got to see him play. But at the same time, like I know those conversations to pick and choose. If I don't think this guy's going to be an NBA player, or if he is 30th guy on the totem pole to who they're looking at, I'm not going to call this GM and be like, hey, you got to look at my guy. I'm going to just catch up with him, see how I can help, see if I can offer any you know, advice or intel on the guy that he's looking at, even if he's not my client, you know, like, because trustworthy and quick information, as you know, in college scouting is the best. And not many people will offer that if it doesn't benefit them, but I do. And I've noticed quickly that's just like a key to genuine, authentic relationships.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the word trust too, and something I've learned about relationship building, and you mentioned this earlier too, is that it's just not an overnight thing. It will take years. You need to be patient. You need to be persistent. And I think that when I was first getting into the industry, I wanted everything to happen fast. I wanted to happen fast. I wanted to almost force it.
Definitely. And I know that's huge, man. And I was the same way, you know. So when I started, like I luckily I kind of ingrained the mindset of long-term in my mind pretty early on, which is great. But I do remember even the first year, like not even having my agent license yet, or even when I just got it, I just remember having some conversations where I knew I was forcing it, and like I noticed it kind of in a conversation, and I was just like, you know, talking to a GM, just feeling like an idiot, like not knowing what I'm saying and not just saying some stupid thing and like being uncomfortable. But then I'm just like, okay, look, be yourself. And I'm just like, as soon as I did that, it was just so easy, man.
Takes the pressure off, really, right?
It does. It does. It does.
And you know what? And like, I feel free because you just want to make it so badly, and you have so much passion for what you're doing, you know, and it's work ethic, gonna try. And sometimes you need to almost let go a little and just,
no doubt. And that's why I think it's important. Like for me, I have, you know, certain kind of benchmarks and goals and, you know, you have to give yourself time. Like if you want to be a Division I head coach or a Division III head coach or whatever it is, like it's not going to happen overnight. So you have to kind of be okay with working and always going for that next step and that next highest coaching job and, you know, recruiting that next better player, but that's never going to stop. Like there's no end, there's no finish line like in life itself. So it's just like, be patient with it and then hustle on the short term too. So it's just kind of that balance that you need.
And what I was told too is make the big time where you are. I think I either read it somewhere or
I like that. Yeah.
Make the big time where you are, regardless of how small it is, because if you do an excellent job for the people around you and the people who are relying on you, that will inevitably lead to good things, you know? So Did you have any mentors along the way that kind of helped you out through the process? It's all been a trial and error, learn on your own sort of thing.
Well, it's definitely been a lot of trial and error, learn on my own. And in regards to mentors, I mean, I wouldn't say there's specifically like a labeled mentor. I mean, I'm just really blessed and lucky that like growing up, I mean, I had, you know, two parents that just kind of cheered for me and rooted for me and supported me and still support me, you know, whatever I'm doing, which was just the core foundation of it. But then just everyone that I insert myself around, whether it's high school coaches, which played a huge role in my life, college coaches at Quinnipiac, which were amazing, you know, professors, teachers, and then there are definitely some guys in the industry that I make sure I'm checking in with all the time, updating them, learning from them, asking them how I could do better, do differently. I wouldn't really label someone specific as a mentor. I know I've read a bunch of different things that, you know, it's so important to have a mentor. And there are certain people on my list that I consider them mentors that I'm always going to surround myself with, because, you know, if I'm the hardest working or smartest in the room, I'm in the wrong room. You know that saying? So it's you know, I always just want to keep people on my speed dial, whether it's my friends, whether it's family, whether it's a coach or another agent in the industry that I can learn from, which there definitely are some. So that's been great. But a lot of it is trial by error. You know, you just jump off the cliff and you figure out how your wings come out on the way down, and you learn quicker that way.
Sometimes it's better to learn from failure and learn from experience, you know, all that way.
Yeah, I think most of the time it is, you know.
Let's talk about that. I want to know about some of your successes and failures. If you have stories you can tell, that's great. But some of those things, successes as well, that you've learned through the process, and kind of things you've taken from that.
Sure. I think with the failure and I don't, you know, like I think you said it right, failure or that word, you know, there's really no failure. It's like you either win or you learn. Right. So, you know, in regards to just this agent specific and recruiting and how to make it in the industry, I think last year I learned a huge lesson with one of the guys I recruited. 6'11" center that played at BYU and then Utah Valley, great basketball player. I think he had a great career in front of him, right? And I recruited him a little bit and met him at one of his exposure camps and just got to know him personally. Great guy, hard worker. And, you know, I had told him that I think he could play at a certain level, but it's going to be difficult, which he knew because, you know, he's not on draft boards and he's not the certain type of player, right? And, you know, we ended up getting him a couple workouts and I flew out to Sacramento with him with the, you know, the Stockton Kings. We had a workout with the coach and we were in the Lakers G League team. It was awesome. And then we finally got there and it was to the G League draft. And, you know, I'd got his name in the draft, which was great. And then a week before the draft, he calls me and he's like, look, man, you know, I appreciate everything you've done for me, but I'm going to take this sales job. And, for me, it was, and it's funny because I told him this too. When the phone rang and I saw his name, I had this, I knew it.
You just knew it. You just felt it.
I felt it. And again, it's definitely not a failure, almost like just a learning experience.
Yeah, of course.
So, and I told him 100%, dude, I'm so happy for you. He had just gotten married. It was a great decision. He enjoys what he's doing now. And for me, it was really just digging into how can I do better recruiting wise? And I think this can go for coaches too, but especially for agents and the guys that want to play overseas. I'm like, if you're not an NBA guy and you want to do this for a living, you have to love it so much that you don't care how long it takes, the ups and downs that you go through, the offers or lack thereof, the amount of of money the contract's for, if you're in Zimbabwe, if you're at the Lakers, or if you're in Australia. Like, you just have to love it. And I had learned that if I can find guys, not that he didn't love it enough, but he made a great decision of what was important to him,
right?
Like basketball, or make my wife happy and live this actually better life that I enjoy, which he made a great decision. But for me, I'm like, I want to find guys that that just love it no matter what, and those are the best guys to have. From a learning experience, or kind of like falling on your face early and changing the way you think, that was huge for me.
So how do you go about necessarily finding those guys? Because it's not something you can just walk into a room and be like, all right, I'm going to pick out that guy. He looks like he plays hard. He must love it. That guy must love it.
Yeah.
How do you go about that process?
The recruiting process in general is there's literally zero formula. But in terms of finding guys that kind of fit that description we just talked about, it's a process, because it's hard to, especially if you don't have a long-term relationship with them, if you haven't talked to them, you don't know the family, if it's kind of like a cold call type cold situation where you're introducing yourself, there's a lot of pressure on that end. So you got to put yourselves in their shoes. Like, an agent's talking to me, how do I have to behave and how to act? But you really want to find over the long term how they act when no one's watching, and what they do in practice when they don't see an agent in the stands or something like that. It's the same for you. When you go to recruit a high school kid and he knows you're coming to practice, he's going to bust his ass.
Yeah.
So like, it's easy to talk. I mean, shoot, if I was in college and I wanted to play in the NBA, I'd be tip top shape with a suit and tie when an agent comes in. Right.
Right.
But, what are you doing on the weekend, and what are you doing after practice? And how do you carry yourself in public? Those are things that just, you have to gather information and intel. You got to talk to, the family, the friend, the teacher, the security guard that he doesn't know you're talking to, all these types of guys to gather that information over the long term. So it's not easy. So
let's go behind the scenes then. So after you are either introduced to somebody, or you know them for a while, or somebody tips you off about this guy that might be a good fit for you, you're doing all your research and you're gathering the intel and you're talking to all those people you talked about. What does that look like when it comes time where something says to you, okay, this is a guy that I think I can represent, that I want in my agency? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's another great question that there's really no answer or formula to specifically. I would say it's all case by case, right? So there's and obviously with the NCAA, it's a conversation for another time. It's very difficult, and like I say all the time, it is so hard, and there's so much pressure for these guys coming out of college that, with all the walls up when they hear agents and all these crazy lawsuits going on with the coaches and the money and all that stuff, that sometimes rightfully so, they just don't know.
Right.
They just don't know the process. They don't know what to expect.
Right.
They don't know who to trust. Their cousin that they haven't talked to in 4 years is smelling NBA that says, oh, come this way. Their high school and AAU coaches are pulling them that way. Their parents are forcing them this way. They're thinking a different way. So in order to really kind of align all those things, there is no formula. But to kind of answer that question, for me, I try and get to the source directly. Like, if I can get introduced to the player to really get a good feel for what he's thinking, who's in his circle, how I can help that, and who are the decision makers, that's the biggest part. And sometimes, again, it's case by case, because sometimes it's like, okay, the kid comes from an amazing family and the parents are going to sit down with 2 agents after the season, and the kid's going to really value their decision, and they're going to go from there. Great. Those 3. Sometimes it's, I want input from my Spanish teacher and my AAU coach and this. And sometimes it's like, maybe the guy comes from a situation that's not a great family situation. He's like, I don't trust anybody. Then it's like, all right, well, how do I have him start to trust me?
Right. Of course. Of course. And it's similar to the recruiting process in college. I mean, you kind of mentioned it. I know you've gone through it. It really is. It's just a different lens, and it's a different thing we're trying to offer, like you're trying to help them with professional career. We're trying to help them with a collegiate career, and yourself, right? And that you have genuine intentions and that you're a good guy and you're going to steer them wrong, whatever. But like you said, put yourself in their shoes. They got 12 college coaches calling their phone. They got 10 agents. They got all these people, whatever it is. it's just a different stage in their life, but it's still like, okay, it's hard to make that decision because they don't want to make the wrong decision, right?
No doubt. No
so
doubt.
putting yourself in their shoes, I feel for these players that we recruit. I feel for the guys that you're talking to about professional careers. So it's got to be difficult for them. And once again, I think it goes back to a relationship thing. And you said it, if you get introduced to these people, there's no substitute for human connection.
Absolutely.
And that's a way, you said differentiation, that's a way you can differentiate yourself, because whether or not they know it or you know it, sometimes you just vibe with somebody, and you know it in the first 30 seconds sometimes of meeting that person. And then I believe they can truly know what you're about and who you are, and put a face to a phone call, as opposed to just, here's another guy that's texting me, here's another guy that's calling me.
Definitely. One of the things that I've found successful and that I utilize to make sure I try and make it as aware as possible with them that like I'm genuine, and like to kind of break that ice and build that trust, is if it's the first time I'm talking to a guy, I don't like talking basketball at all.
Love it.
Like I'm
That's
like,
awesome.
Look, man, if you weren't good at basketball, I probably wouldn't be talking to you, to be completely real with you.
Yeah, of course.
So
they know that too.
Obviously you're good at basketball. So like, some of the questions that the first question I'll ask, I'm like, look, if the ball stopped bouncing and God forbid something happens tomorrow, like, what are you going to do with your life? And they're just
That's awesome.
I thought we were talking about NBA. It's like, no. That's not why I'm here, And then, and the other thing is, usually even before that, actually, it's like, a phrase I use a lot is, use me as a resource. Like, I'm not, this is going to be a process. It's going to take a long time to get to know each other, but use me as a resource. If there's a question, ask me. And like, I think when I can get in front of a kid and say that and really talk to them and have a conversation, whether it's in person or over the phone, they're like, okay, wow. Like, actually, I am curious about this, this, and this. I'm like, I'll answer it. I'll answer it unbiasedly. And if you want to ask me, great. If not, no worries. Just stay in touch. How can I help? And that's it. We don't even talk about representing them or being an agent or whatever. And then that's how you kind of open that up. For me, at least, it's been great. It's helped me. It's helped me sign a couple of my guys. It's also helped me with relationships with players that I don't represent, that I may never represent, that have another agent, but it's just a good relationship to have. Like, you never know.
Right.
And if I can, at the end of the day, back to like the mission and what I get out of it and my why, it's like, if I can help somebody be a small part of achieving their dreams, like, great. Cool. Obviously you balance that with, okay, eventually I got to make some money and it's a business. Yeah, right. Sure. But right now in this stage, it's just growing, it's building, it's just really building that reputation and a lot of learning, and it'll come eventually. But
no, it's great that's what you value, and I think that those players that you talk to, I would imagine that they truly value that about you as well. Because once again, we go back to differentiation, but to me, that's a brilliant way of you showing that you care about them as actual people and not just another item number, that you're trying to get a paycheck at.
Well, it's the give without expectation. That's exactly what it is. I'm like, look, can I help you? Can I give you information without, like, I'm not asking you to sign a paper. Like, can I just help?
For a lot of your guys, I'm sure their dream is NBA, right? And then it gets to a point where they get to reach the end of their college career and they're not on those draft boards. That's got to be a difficult thing for them to swallow. Obviously, it's still beautiful for them that they have an opportunity to make some money and play overseas and still maybe have a chance to come back and make it to the NBA eventually, right? Yep. But initially, what's that situation like? Is your humility something that you can impress upon them? How do you approach that situation in one of those conversations, like with those guys, in that balance?
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult conversation to have, because on one hand, like, no one wants to hear that they're not good enough to be in the NBA.
Yeah, right.
Or not even that they're not good enough, just like they don't want to hear from an agent, I don't think you're going to the NBA. I think you're going here. So it's a very tough conversation to have, but I also think that's what guys appreciate, like the honesty. So I don't like to tell guys what they want to hear. It's difficult, but I have to tell guys what they need to hear. So Look, let's just, I typically do a math problem. It's like there's, 350 teams in Division One. There's top 25, let's just say.
Yep.
First of all, are you on a top 25 team? And it's usually no, at least not yet in my recruiting stages.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, on those top 25 teams, those starting 5, there's a lot of very good players. Let's just take the top 2 players on every team. So,
Yep.
You think of Duke, it's like, how can you name the top 2? Obviously, the top 1, so
Right.
you think of UNC, all these great schools, right? So top 2 of the top 25 teams, that's 50 guys. And I'm like, okay, let's just pause, keep that here. Go to the NBA draft. How many draft spots are there? 60. Okay. Well, the past couple of years, not quite 50, but there's a lot of overseas guys. So let's just put that number at 40. 40 spots left for guys from the States. Okay. At the end of the second round, a lot of those guys get drafted and stashed, or they end up going overseas anyway. So let's just say there's 40 spots. Right now, there's not even enough spots for those top 50 players for those spots, let alone seniors to freshmen. It's a math problem. So
Right.
then they start to realize, wow, that is difficult. I'm like, yeah,
Right.
you need to be not only talented, not only have the right mindset, but you got to be lucky to make the NBA.
The right
So then you start to
situation.
realize,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
But then it goes into the conversation of, look, I love the fact that you think you could be in the NBA. And I'm all for it. I'm going to support you for that. But what we have to do is take the realistic steps. So if you want to get to the NBA, how do you get there? And it's not going to be going to the draft this year. It's going to be going here, surrounding yourself with this, proving you can do this skill set. And most of the time, whether it's in the G League, but it's overseas.
Yeah.
And then they hear that, like, oh. And so, or some guys are like, all right, cool. I'm not going to get drafted. I'll go make 100K overseas. And I'm just like, oh, man. Take a seat. Let's talk. It's just like, you have to love the game so much that you're willing to take $800 a month and live in an apartment that has, a dripping faucet and water pressure, and find out how to take the local B train or tram to
sit down and read a menu that you don't know what anything on that menu
Yes.
means, and
Yes.
just immerse yourself fully into it.
And I can tell, like, in that conversation, if it's someone that I think we can we can be on the same page with, and if they're hungry enough. And sometimes it's not the right fit. Like, maybe I'm not a good enough agent to represent them, or I have a different mind, so I say there's 3 things usually, and actually a friend of mine that's an agent told me there's 3 things that got to be in line. And it's where you think you are and where you think you can go, where I think you are and where I think you can go. And the third one is reality. And if those 3 don't match up for whatever reason, it's not going to work, which is fine. Like, if we're not a match, if you're better than I think you are, or one of those things out of line, great, high five you. I'm rooting for you. I'm going to be here for you, but it's just not a right
Not
match.
fit, right? Right, and that's got to be just as important because of the relationship. Yeah.
And that's okay. But that's just part of the recruiting process. And what I tell guys that they should be thinking about as these agencies are promising them X, Y, and Z, or they think they're at level X, Y, or Z. Just think about that. Explain it to them. And a lot of times, most guys get it. But some guys don't.
Thanks for listening to part 1 of my conversation with Kevin Tarca. Part 2 should be released soon, so be on the lookout for that. You can find more on Kreation Talent Agency on Instagram. That's Kreation Talent, Kreation with a K. So check them out there. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at mstrike3. That's MSTRIKE3, as well as at the Coach's Classroom. All of that social media information will be posted in the show notes as well, so you can always refer to it there. Definitely got to give a shout out to Para Podcasting and PodSource, who produce all of the Coach's Classroom episodes. So got to thank them for being able to give us a platform to bring you guys these conversations. Make sure you're on the lookout for part 2 of my conversation with Kevin, and we'll jump more into the international basketball scene, a couple stories from Kevin, and more specifics from that. So we'll catch you then.